Welcome back, dear ones. Welcome to Amplify the Voices of the Global Majority Summit, Day 3, Session 4. It'll be a conversation on transforming childhood wounds into present-day power with Dr. Lyla June. And before I do that, I just want to honor just the container that we've created. Like we've been dancing with some heavy stuff, y'all. Like today, we've talked about race, and then we're going to talk about grief, right? And now we're going to talk about childhood wounds, right? So I just want to offer gratitude to each of you for the courage to step into these conscious conversations in community. Right? Like this is the medicine that's required for these times. Like this isn't a political statement, this is a spiritual statement. To feel as though we're forced into suffer in isolation, the revolution is to remember that we can learn and heal together. You feel me? Like if they're telling us to suffer in silence and we suffer in community, that's the revolution. And that's the revolution I'm excited to lead. Or at least be a servant towards stewarding. So I'm grateful for each of you being here. And before we get into introducing Lyla June, I want to offer a grounding practice rooted in sound. So I've only played once or twice out of all of these. So sorry for those of you who've been hoping I'd play more. But I'm going to offer a simple scale. And that simple scale is to not only call in benevolent beings and set the tone and clear the space and all of these things, but to remember that, as Larry talked about, even in the disorder, there's order. Even in the noise, there's beauty. When Larry talked about my mindfulness or my non-attachment practice as eating, that was just... So even in something simple is the cosmos. Right? So I'm hopeful that the sound that I play for you just brings you back home so that we can enter this wisdom with a clean slate, open heart, clear mind, and clean slate, carrying no baggage, only carrying present awareness. Okay? So find movement in the body that feels necessary in this moment or stillness. Softening the eyes or closing them all together and just bringing a sense of presence to what the body needs. For those of you still present with grief, maybe shaking out like Amaratma showed us. And again, just giving you what you need here. And as a sense of grounding, I'll just offer a simple scale with beautiful harmonics to represent the order that exists in the chaos, the love that subsumes hate as we practice it, and the peace that passes all understanding. Deep inhale through the nose. Exhale out nose or mouth. Slowly welcome yourself back into the space. Thank you for my sonic indulgence. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Lyla June. Dr. Lyla June is an indigenous musician, scholar, and community organizer of Diné European heritage. She holds a doctorate in indigenous studies and combines poetry, music, and activism to explore decolonial healing and empowerment. Her work bridges trauma recovery and cultural regeneration. And I'll also say, I wore this sweatshirt in honor of her presentation, right? So it says, "Dear ancestors, I understand the assignment." So I know that in my life and teaching, my assignment is to heal myself, not just for myself, but for them and those who cross my path going forward. So, as we will close this full day with this beautiful offering from Dr. Lyla, allow her words and her wisdom to awaken something beautiful in you, something urgent and ancient. Dr. Lyla, enough of me. I welcome you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here. I'm honored to be here. I'll just briefly introduce myself. Yeah, shik Shidane. Greetings, my kin and my family, my people. She'e Nanisht Ejutachitn. I'm from the Nanisht Ejutachitni clan of the Dene Nation. We are also incorrectly known as Navajo. Our name for ourselves is Dene. Navajo was a name given to us by the colonial cultures. Um, and that clan comes from my mother. We are a matrilineal people. So we get our last names from our mothers, not from our fathers. My second clan that I do honor, however, is my father's mother, which is a Tsitsis Bashishchin. That means Southern Cheyenne, I am born for. So my father's mother's clan is my second clan in the Dene way of thinking. And then the third clan we honor is our mother's father. So it starts with mother's mother, father's mother, then mother's father, which is Ashinhe, Salt clan of the Dene. Ado Belagane de Chanele. The fourth clan we honor is our father's father. Patrilineal line, that would be Scottish in my case. So I am a mixture of many things, but definitely feeling deeply rooted in my mother line as a Dene woman. Um, really happy and excited for this class today. I feel like um, I just want to preface the entire thing by saying um, I'm going to organize this class so you can go as deep as you feel you have the capacity to go today. Even if you don't even want to put one toe in, that's okay. You're still going to get the tools and the resources you need to go deeper later once you might have more capacity or more resources, more time or energy, more whatever to go deeper. So, having said that, we do have some tools and resources that we're sharing today that you can dive into a little bit if you want during this call, if you feel like you're in a good place to maybe explore some of these things, you're more than welcome to. And I'm also setting it up for people to be able to do that too. The deepest message of this course is love, which is probably the deepest message for everything we do, right? To love yourself and to love others, which loving the self is sometimes hard to do, and loving others is sometimes hard to do. But that is really the goal of turning childhood wounds into present day power is how do we compost those things and turn them into fuel rather than them remaining as weights that kind of hold us back or hold us down. Um, and I would also say that this is really careful work. So I would definitely like to encourage you to be gentle with yourself, to be careful with yourself. I'm going to try to be very careful as well as I guide you through various things in a gentle way, in a loving way. And feel free to take care of yourself. If you're um, feeling something that is just a little too intense to hold in the moment, call up a friend, turn the Zoom off and phone a friend or even connect with Kripalu staff if you're feeling like this starts bringing up something that's a little challenging for you. Just know that there's plenty of resources out there, including myself at the end, if you have, specific things that are really, that this class brings up for you that's really hard. Thirdly, I really think it's important for me to say that what I'm about to share is is free. It's and I'm going to be donating all the funds from this class that I receive to another location because I'm not really allowed to profit from this kind of work because it is sacred and it is sacred things that I'm sharing with you that was already shared with me. So I can't really, It's not mine to profit off of. So all the proceeds will be going to charity for this call. I don't want anyone here to get the wrong idea. True healing is free. You should never have to pay for healing, in my humble opinion, or hopefully humble opinion. So that's good because that reinforces the truth that the deepest healing should never cost you anything because Creator and the ancestors are around us and in us and below us and above us at all times. And they're so here to help us all the time. Um, Secondly, I want to go into the outline of the course. So the course today, or rather the class, is um, so step one involves listening to the stories of other people who have made headway in their process to gain inspiration. I think listening to other people's stories is sometimes more effective than even listening to our own story because it's so easy for us to detach from uh, the story. It's like almost like we're in a safe place to learn lessons from it because we're not in it. But then when we're talking about our own story, sometimes there's more at stake and we don't want to look at stuff. Right? But sometimes, like when I went to Australia and I saw the Aboriginal folks, their experience of colonization, it just shattered my heart into pieces, which is what I needed because I saw colonization purely without being so subjective within it. And then it allowed me my heart to break for me because I was like, wait a second, this is what happened to Native people in the US. It's the same thing. But there was less at stake for me to see it in them, what they were going through, because it wasn't about me. But then once you really see it, you realize, oh, that actually is about me. And so it's this wonderful way of kind of helping your heart see the truth, to see other people's stories. And that's why story is so important. Um, because we can learn from each other sometimes a lot more powerfully than we can even learn from ourselves sometimes. So the second step after listening to stories will be to journal about certain things that we personally wish we could heal in our past. I know probably all of us on this call, including myself, have things we wish we could, you know, put some movement into and not feel so stuck about. Um, so I think that'll be helpful even just to write them down. Like I said, you don't have to dive into them in this call. You don't really have to do anything in this call, but at least you're going to have some directions of where you might want to go and some tools of how to get there. Um, Thirdly, we're going to talk about reframing scars from sources of shame to metals of honor and sources of power. That's a really important one. Um, and it goes across the board. Um, and Fourthly, we're going to learn a process that I was taught, which is I'm calling it the LFF process, even though my elders didn't call it that. But they said, look, feel, forgive. And even though it's just 3 words, it's quite a doozy to do with various chapters of our life. So looking, feeling, forgiving. Forgiving being a critical part, right? Ironically, as many people have said, it liberates us more than the person we're upset with or the situation we're upset with. And there's a reason for forgiving, which we will get into at the end, and why that pesky forgiveness thing is so important. Um, so let's go ahead and get started. We're going to start first with some stories, and we have about an hour and 8 minutes. We do have 15 minutes for Q&A. So really, we have about an hour and a little less than an hour to get through these 4 steps. So I'm going to try to pace us at like 15 minutes per step or so. Um, I can start with my own story, and then I invite, hopefully, if I'm not too long-winded, if someone wants to share their story of how they managed to turn one of their childhood wounds into a source of power, you're welcome to unmute and share. We probably will have to limit it to like maybe 2 or 3 minutes per share. Sorry about that in advance. So for me, there's so many different things I could choose from of childhood wounds, but I think I'll start with let's start with drug addiction. Okay, so when I was um, in utero, there were a lot of drugs and alcohol around. Um, and my father was an addict, um, and other family members were alcoholics and such. So I grew up very from birth, with alcohol and drugs around me all the time. And not only were those substances present, but the act of escaping hard problems through the use of substance was a normalized behavior. And so that all gets imprinted, right? From the age 0 to 5, there's some of the most important years of your life. And they can really lay the foundation for the rest of your life if you don't have a support system to heal sort of what those years taught us. And so 0 to 3 is especially important. They say about 90% of the brain is developed and formed on a physical level by age 5. So a lot of everything we consider normal, even what we consider possible, is is developed in these first 5 years of life. And of course, if you're like, my parents, or maybe you've done this yourself as a parent, no shame, we don't know that. And we think, oh, I just, my dad would always say, oh, I thought you would never remember that stuff. So I just went hog wild when you were a kid. And sort of like, no, those were the most important years for you to like be careful, Like, he had it flipped. He was like, oh, she'll never remember any of this. Just do whatever the heck I want. And then once she gets older, I'll start to be a little more thoughtful with how I act as a role model, when in fact, it's actually the opposite. So um, at 11 years old, I started doing drugs directly. Prior to that, I had done secondhand, Um, and so 11 years old, I started smoking marijuana. 12 years old, I took my first drink of hard alcohol. 14, I started doing cocaine. I did uh, uh, the older kids and I mean much older, in their 20s, were giving us younger kids heroin. I had done it all. I was deep, deep in the hard drugs, and the not so hard drugs. And of course, alcohol, which is a very normalized drug in our society. And when I was 20, I really felt like there was something wrong with me, right? Like, um, I'm just this druggy. I somehow got into Stanford by some miracle. I still don't know how, but I managed to use school as a way to kind of escape everything as well. Um, and my elders found me at age 20, and they helped me get sober. And they helped me realize that alcohol and drugs are not um, things that I need. And that actually all I really need is the love of the creator. And I had known about creator prior to that, thank goodness. Um, but it really hit me in a very deep way when I was 20. And it took me a couple years of starting and stopping, but when I was 23, I put it all down for good. So I'm now standing 12 years sober, completely sober. Um, this December, I'll be 13 years completely sober, not a single drop of alcohol, not a single this, not a single that. But my point is that um, if anybody, if the police, for example, would have caught me at age 19 doing some illegal substance, which was very possible at the time, kind of lucky it didn't happen. Um, they they could have said, Lila, you're a bad girl. In fact, you're a terrible girl, and you're going to jail, and you're going to be punished, right? And so that is the punitive justice model, right? Like these scars being sources of shame. Um, and now instead, it has become a source of power, because what the elders said, they didn't say that. What they said was, you know what the thing they told me when they first found out about the drug stuff? The very first word they told me was, I'm sorry. I'm like, you're sorry to me? Why? I'm the one being bad. They said, I'm sorry that all you've known since the day you were born was drugs. I'm sorry that people got you high when you were 11 years old. I'm sorry that no one was taking care of you, watching over you when you were 12, when you took your first drink. I'm sorry that we couldn't get to you sooner. You know what I'm saying? So I think that kind of compassion and understanding is what we're going to try to approach all of our childhood wounds with today and all of our imperfections with today. Because oftentimes people, quote unquote, do bad things, not because they are bad, but because something bad was done to them that is still healing. And so reframing it from, you're a bad person to, I'm sorry that this happened to you. And I'm sorry life has been so tough that you haven't had a chance to heal these things. Um, and so, ironically, if someone had put me in jail, I probably wouldn't have healed. It was my elders who said, I'm sorry and we love you, that actually healed me. So that's another really important part of restorative justice, which I think is incredibly important um, when it comes to healing our childhood wounds, is to have a restorative justice lens. And what's fascinating was these elders at the same time, they told me, do you want to be a warrior for creator? And I said, yes, I think that sounds good. I'm just sitting around smoking cigarettes anyways, might as well do something good with my life. They said, okay, um, if you want to be a warrior for the creator, you're going to need to um um you're going to need to, or rather, they said you'll fight better when you have none of the chemicals in you, when you're free of those chemicals. Because when you're free of those chemicals, you're going to see better, you're going to hear better, you're going to think sharper, and you're going to be much more efficient in your service to creator than if you were under the influence. And so that's the day when I turned into quite a zealous servant of the community. And that's the day that I went from being essentially a menace to society to being this like girl who's obsessed with helping people. Because now I know my true purpose is to help. And so I kind of, there's a Dene creation story similar to that, where, the warrior twins were fighting these bird monsters out in the desert where we're from. We're from New Mexico, Colorado, Utah, Arizona, and they're fighting these bird monsters. And there was two baby birds who were left, and the warrior twins approached them and said, wow, there's these two baby bird monsters. Should we kill them or what? And I said, no, let's transform them. Let's turn one of them into eagle and one of them into owl. An eagle will have the job of carrying the prayers up to the creator. An owl will have the job of teaching us wisdom from folly. And if you go to Shiprock, New Mexico, there's two stones, two gigantic 30-foot tall stones, and one of them looks like an eagle and one of them looks like an owl. So that's the story that's encoded in that geological site, is that instead of punishing something, transform something and give it a job, give it a purpose. And I feel that's kind of what happened to me. So in this sense, now I go around to Native American schools across the country and I talk about sobriety and I get real with them. I'm like, look, I've been there, I've done that. I know what it's like. Because most of Native youth, they're not dumb. They see crazy stuff all the time. They're not um, you know, um living an idyllic life. So, but here's the thing, here's the kicker. Would they even be able to relate to someone who'd never done drugs in their life? And if someone has never done drugs in their life, good. That's good. You have other jobs. But because I went through what I went through, those kids are going to listen to me differently, right? They're going to be like, okay, this lady's been through it. She knows the ins and outs. She knows the challenges. She's not just talking at us, she's talking to us. And so um, that's how my scars of drug addiction turned into a source of power, And as many of you have probably heard of, this whole wounded healer thing, right? That you gain these wounds and you walk across the river with these wounds, and on the other side, that wound becomes your source of power because you can help people usually only with things you have yourself have overcome. And so, as crazy as it sounds, I think that I prayed to go through what I went through so that I could go back into Native communities and support these kids because they are going through a lot. And thank God it's getting better, a lot better than it was 10 years ago, for example. But Native youth are struggling with a lot of addiction, a lot of poverty, a lot of crazy stuff. So, whatever it is you've been through, and each of us, not one single person without a single exception, has our path, has our gifts, and has our wounds that can then become power. So, but the thing is, we have to get across the river to turn that wound into a source of power. And that's what I'm hoping. And many of you have already done that in different ways. I already know that, or all of you, I should say. But I'm giving us tools, hopefully, to help us do that even more with different things. Um, so that's a really important tenet, I think, that my elders taught me is that we can't really help others from something we haven't been through ourselves. And we can intellectualize about it, we can talk abstractly about it, right? But usually some of the most effective healers or the effective supporters or change makers are the people who started at this bottom place and worked their way up and know the path, the twisty, windy path, and the trap doors and the booby traps of like how to get there, you know. Whereas if someone has never been through it, they can talk about it, but they don't really know. Um, so I'll just say one more thing and then I'll open it up to folks if you want, and no pressure at all if you'd rather not share. Um, I liken it somewhat to a maze. So a maze is like you go in, you get lost, and you find your way back out. But once you've gone in and found your way out, you can go back into the maze and get people who are still lost in there and bring them out too. But if you've never been in the maze, how are you to help them back out? You don't know the way out. So I think we all have our own maze that we are in. And some of it has to do with race. Some of it has to do with loss of culture, loss of connection to ancestors. Some of it has to do with being a woman on Earth. That's freaking hard. Some of it has to do with being a man on Earth, which is also freaking hard. Has to do with being a non-binary two-spirit person on Earth. Very hard, right? There's really no easy um path here. And so each of us can help our specific demographic in a very special way. Um, on that note, my elders also told me that essentially we all have a very specific makeup. So I was born as a Native woman. Um, I can open doors in ways that a white woman cannot. Conversely, a white woman can open doors that I cannot. A black man. And I know that sounds very too simplistic, but unfortunately, the world is very visual and like they kind of like people are very visual creatures. And our our physical package that our spirit is housed in is actually always, every single time, perfect, perfectly designed to help our spirits do what our spirit came here to do. And I call it my passport. This is my passport to certain populations. And even, of course, the experience that I had is going to help me relate to certain people. And all of that is perfect. And that was a really important point that they taught me, is that each and every one of us is perfect, like is born as we are, who we are, with great purpose, with great purpose. There's no accidents here. And I know that sounds sometimes hard to believe, but it is not. Each of us was brought here with great purpose and given a lot of good tools to achieve that purpose. And of course, generally speaking, that purpose is to help the world heal. Um, Anyone else want to chime in? We have maybe 5 minutes if someone would like to share how your childhood wound was made into present day power. I know that's a loaded ass question, so feel free to not. But if somebody wanted to, you're welcome to.
Well, I'll take the bait.
Hmm.
It's Reggie. So I grew up as a black man in the suburbs. So I was an alien to black kids because I was smart. I was an alien to white kids because I was black. So I had to basically, by necessity, have such self confidence, but the ability to relate to all people was nurtured from like age 4 or 5. It was painful as a child, but I get along with everybody now. And it's because of what I experienced as a kid. Like I had to be confident in myself and reach out and introduce myself because no one else would accept me. So I had to accept myself and then from there go out.
Right, right, right. That's yep, that's a good point. Anybody else want to share their experience? Yes, Emily, go ahead.
Hi, Emily. So good to hear you. And I deeply related to the details, growing up in an alcoholic home, having that passed on. And I think for some ways for me, it was, um, in Al-Anon, they talk about wounded birds. So both my parents are children of alcoholics who are in their own addiction, raising someone, and they tried to outsmart it. They thought if they could teach me, tell me to be careful while they're drinking, right? You got to be careful with alcohol. You got to be careful with drugs. And and I think that's part of it is like that path is also laid out. I had the information. I was exposed to, recovery very young by other people, and I still had my path. And and now this summer I'll be 19 years sober, clean and sober. And like it's just like you said, it's a gift that I'm uniquely qualified to help others in that way. And then it's generational. I think about it like this is also generational healing because I come from generation of alcoholics and what that means to stop that here and to model that and then to add in it's like once I do that then I can open myself up for the spiritual work because I tried some of it. I was in therapy, I would do seeking, but I couldn't fully engage until I did this work soberly, and so thank you for sharing.
Mm. No, thank you for sharing, Emily. Really appreciate that. Thank you so much. Tamara?
Hello, everyone. Sorry, I'm in my sauna right now, so I'm trying to go off of camera. Okay, I don't know if I did that. Am I on camera? Can you
You're
take me
you're
off
not
the
on
camera?
camera, but we can hear you. You're good to
Oh,
go.
good. Okay, I was gonna say you do not want to see me right now. Well, beautiful Dr. Lyla June. I am so grateful to be back in sacred space with you. And I'll say this year I went dry. Although I have, I'm a complex childhood trauma survivor, I knew that that's what drove me in part to become a therapist. I recognize that this intersectional identity, as you talked about, very much um, rooted in my trauma, but also it's been leverage for the work that I've done around healing and liberation. And so I love how you frame this because I think so oftentimes we get stuck in the hardship of things and not understanding that once we can grieve it, and part of the grieving process is being able to find our purpose so that we can get to the people that are waiting for us. And so I'm just deeply gratified by your presence, and thank you so much for the expansive, amazing work that you do.
Oh, alhamdulillah, mashallah. Thank you so much. I like those words. I don't speak Arabic, but they're really helpful words. All praise to Creator, and it's all by Creator's grace that I'm able to be here. So thank you, Damara. Zay Oli.
Oh, hi, Dr. Lyla June. My name is Z. I've been a fan of yours for a while, so I'm really grateful that I've gotten this opportunity to share the space and hear you speak live. I found you through your music, talking about being a multiracial and multi-ethnic person here in Turtle Island, or the so-called United States region of it. One thing I wanted to share, I deeply relate to your story because my father, who is native through my Oaxacan and Jalisco region ancestry, yeah, substance abuse is prevalent in my family. And it's interesting because I feel like despite people in my family trying to be aware of it, the consumption of escape can come in many forms, not just drugs and alcohol. And so you know, for me, as I was listening to you, I was reflecting on, I avoided drugs and alcohol growing up. I was very much that straight edge kid, and proud of it. But then I very much indulged in ways like in college and in my post grad life of just overindulgence in relationships that weren't great for me, other behaviors that weren't great for me. And when I look at it as someone who is a multiracial person and not of non-white European heritage, like I never could pass or cover. And so, and you don't have to necessarily answer this question, but it's a question I just want to pose out into the universe is like, how do you, or more so we, keep it real and stay grounded in the hope when there's systems at play and so many other factors and components? Because for me, I thought like, oh, I made it. I didn't give in drugs like my father did growing up, or like my grandfather, who was just a very abusive person through his substance abuse to others. And it made me and my father not want to get to know our indigenous heritage, but I embodied that type of, I forget how you said that your elders framed it, but that type of, I embodied it in other ways. And I know that you have shared about you also doing the work now of helping other, especially Native youth. I really appreciate you uplifting Heal through this and trying to, reckon with these truths. Because, a lot of people will say like, oh, that plagues that community. But then I always am trying to get to the root of things of like, well, not just the why, but how and where does it come from? And also how do we, disrupt that? How do we divest from that? And how do we reconnect and remember our way and keep going. And so I just wanted to, again, send my appreciation,
Mm.
and also share that connection that I appreciate through your story. Because I mean, as much as I know you've probably told that story a lot, like, thank you for taking us there with you again. I empathize. And then also just bringing it, trying to expand on your expansion even more in the abundance of like, thinking of it as, the consumption in other ways and the care we need to put behind this, especially when it's like systemic through whether white supremacy. But all I was just
Oh,
going to say
okay,
is
okay,
thank you. Thank you
okay.
for that, and wanted to share and expand.
Thank you. Yeah, you're right. You're right. Because um, yeah, when I stopped doing the drugs, I found other ways, right? You can work yourself to death and never have to feel any of your feelings. So we'll get into the the LFF process at the end of this. We'll get into that, which part of that is feeling, right? So feeling means not running from feelings, which we find all kinds of creative ways to run from feelings. Adrian, let's have you speak and then we'll move on, dear Empress.
Thank you. Just to quickly add a story of a little bit of a different color, a part of my childhood wound has really been around the trauma of growing up in this culture, this capitalist, consumerist, oppressive culture that just like wants more and more and more. And the way I learned to cope with that was collecting achievements and trophies and just doing, and rode the fallacy of the American dream and the American grind to its natural end till I, really burned out. And it broke me down in a way that gave me the space to actually learn how to grow into my real self. When that just wasn't an option anymore and I could not go back to it, I explored all these different indigenous ways, all of these different ancient wisdom ways, all of these, and even traditional psychotherapy and modalities and things like that to really create a blend of healing ways to help decolonize myself first. And now that's a part of the work that I do with other people who are in this matrix and in this construct and can't even recognize what it is, and begin to break down those walls and belief systems and perspectives to get at that a fresh slate to build from. So thank you for letting me share that.
No, thank you. I mean, that's a maze of its own. How do we stop being overachievers? Why do we become overachievers in the first place? Do we love ourselves enough to just be, period, to just be, period? And then from that point, we can do things. But do we do things to be loved? And you had to go through that, like you said, to its end, which was burnout. And sometimes rock bottom is the best place to be. I mean, it's the place of transformation. What's worse is when we don't hit rock bottom and we just kind of hum along in our little thing, never quite having to reckon with its true consequences and true ways that it distracts us from our healing. Thank you all so much for sharing. I really appreciate that. Like I said, I'm like everybody's gonna grab on to different things that different people say. So step 2 here is about journaling. I have my journal as well. Of what get a piece of paper, or these days we just type, right? It's like lately I'm like, do I even remember how to write with a pencil? But I do, it turns out. But yeah, get your notebook out or your notepad or whatever, but your laptop Word document or whatever. And let's start writing down a few things that thank you, Krista. Overachieving was the only way I could manage my way out of my deeply abusive childhood home. Now I can reflect and accept myself. When I'm at rest and when I'm connecting with it. I can be not doing that. Thank you for sharing that. So the prompt is, and I'll write it here in the chat, is what are some things about your past/childhood that you wish you could improve or heal or process or release or transform or whatever. And so before we get in, before you start writing, I just want to wax philosophical a second about why do we do this? Why do we go through this terrible, messy, gnarly process of healing? It's not fun. It doesn't feel good. It always involves tears and snot. And I wish I liked crying more than I do. Some people love it. I don't like it. It's just, you like it? Oh, okay. My friend Rachel likes it. I don't know. I'm just like, oh, here we go again with the snot. But the reason we do this is because there's many reasons why we do it. But two of the reasons I want to share is number one, it has incredible rewards for our daily life. Because, for example, Adrienne said she's working herself to the bone for whatever reason. For me, my workaholism was about being worthy enough to exist, frankly, because in my home, you were only good if you could do what the older people wanted you to do and do it well. And if you didn't, you were bad. And so that was the motive for me. I just wanted to be loved. I wanted to be worthy of love, worthy of acceptance, right? And so that wears on you. It's the wear and the tear. So if I can get down into the under the hood of my heart and understand where did this come from and feel the grief of like, wow, the older people when I was a kid, that was the setup. And then when the tears flow, that's when you know you're in a good path. That means, things are moving. Tears are good. Even though they're messy and snotty, they're really good. Good indication that you're making some headway. And the in that process of getting under the hood, you start to cry, you start to see what's going on. And then in your daily life, right, you start to do things because you like to do them. You start to do things because your heart is motivating you to do them. So you get my point. Is there's extreme rewards for your daily life, for your stress levels. Ideally, the goal is for you to get to a point where you are at peace, right? When we are at peace, which I'm still not at peace, I'll admit, be the first to admit, but the goal to get there is so that we can do what Creator always wanted us to do, which was joy. This weird thing called joy was actually what Creator wants for us. Who would have thought? Um, and the second big reason why we do this is that wounded healer thing. We can help others. That's actually the only thing that helped me get sober. Because honestly, I didn't care about myself. But when they said you can help others heal anything you heal from, I was like, oh, I can think of hundreds or thousands of Native youth who are addicted to drugs right now, who need me. And that was the impetus to push me through this terrible, snotty process because I knew at the other end of that tunnel was my capacity to be of service in a very effective way, right? And that's what I always wanted as a kid. I just want to be effective. I want to like actually move the needle, make some change. So um those are the two big reasons I can identify. There's probably more. But anyways, let's go ahead and start out. Let's all try and write 3 to 10 things that we wish we could improve or heal or process or release or transform. Let's share some of our things, and then we can continue journaling after we hear a few, just in case other people's things might jog our memory. Um, Feel free to unmute or write in the chat. And don't provide a whole explanation or backstory, just say the sentence you wrote of the thing you want to. And of course, no pressure. I know these are very personal things, but if you feel so moved to share, please share a sentence if you want. One of the ones I wrote is, I would like to remember that I exist. Oh, similar to Laura's. Embody a right to be seen and heard. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Gary. Yeah. Childhood emotional neglect. Healing from not being enough, healing from being disconnected. Spoke up about when I did not agree. Difficulty saying, I'm sorry, I made a mistake, I lied, I did wrong. I would like to improve my ability to give and receive love. Stop tiptoeing. Feeling I have to earn love, not knowing what my voice is, not feeling protected. I wish my mother or father held my hand. Feel lovable despite my family's inability to be loving. Feeling responsible for everyone else's needs. Ooh, I feel that one. Shame around desire. That's a big one. I've definitely tussled with that one a lot. Intergenerational pain. Many generations of women in pain over being unwanted. This is powerful stuff. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. One of my elders said, many people sit in the chair, very few of their feet touch the ground. Meaning we're all kind of like kids still in these big bodies who have these childhood things that are hurting. And, you know, um, not all of us have had a chance to heal that inner child. Um, um, Thank you all so much. I really appreciate it. I'm sure even just putting these into words is helping me because I have a lot of things I don't even know what they are until I speak them out loud. So thank you for helping each other. Um, and here's the crazy kicker is we all not only deserve love, but we are all loved. And that child who is there, every single person reading these in other people, our instant emotion is empathy. Our instant emotion is wanting to hold that child, right? And I loved what someone said, feeling worthy of love, even with my family's inability to love. That's such a good way to put it because people being unable to love you is very different than not being lovable. We are all so loved. And I think that's why a lot of people talk about holding that child, giving that child the love and safety that they didn't have. Because then we're kind of redoing that and helping that inner child feel and have the support that they needed, which many believe ripples into the future to today. And that's why it's so, so helpful when we have children. They heal us so much, right? Because we can see, wow, that's how old I was when that thing happened to me. I would never do that to this kid. And we realize, I love that poem I recently read. I'm going to read it to us here real quick. Wilted flowers. Wait till you have kids that behave just like you, my parent told me. But I did. I did have kids that are just like me. And I realized how easy it was to love me, how easy it was to be kind, to not belittle and humiliate. I have kids that are just like me, but they will never feel my heartbreak. And so that's why sometimes our kids are sent to us to help us heal, to give us a mirror, or our nieces or our nephews or whomever. We see that, wow, this kid totally does, like, so easy. Not to say that it was easy for our parents at the time, they all have their reasons and we can't judge them. Or, God only knows what is going on in their heads and their hearts. But we can see that the correct way, whether someone's able to do it the correct way or not, is to love and to support one another. And so, yes, I can put this poem in the chat. Good idea. Okay, so we're going to go into our third step here. And I know there's a bazillion things we could say in this Zoom that we're not saying because there's so many tools. I loved how someone said childhood emotional neglect. That's actually a really helpful, not only the term, but the whole philosophy and the whole set of tools that goes into healing that. I highly suggest that you look that up if it rings a bell in you, because there's actually incredible YouTube videos about it. And one of the YouTube videos I watched talked about how when a child, their parent helps them understand their identity. So if the parent says, you're bad, you're bad, you're bad, that's the kid, that the children, in other words, don't really have the capacity to build their own identity. They need their parent to mirror one to them, which I found fascinating. Like we can't, we're unable to create one on our own. We don't have any colors to paint with. So our parents give us the colors we paint with. And so if a kid is really, really sad and the parent says, oh, you're so happy, good job. You're going to be, isn't it a beautiful day? When clearly that kid's like crying. That kid has a hard time connecting with how they actually feel because that parent is mirroring to them something different than what they're actually experiencing. Whereas if you get hurt and the parent says, wow, that must have really hurt. Ouch, are you okay? Those are such a powerful question. Are you okay? I wish people had asked me that a lot more as a kid because it would have forced me to think, how am I doing? It would have helped me connect, but I never got that question. No one ever said, are you okay? They were saying, Lyla, I'm not okay. Can you help me? And so that's why I have a hard time knowing that I exist, because in my childhood, everything mirrored to me that I existed to serve others. So I don't really have the ability to touch in with what I want and need and what I'm going through, although I'm getting much better at it. And so the other thing that some parents, when they just ignore the kid or they're too busy for the kid, what that mirrors is that the kid doesn't exist. So we grew up thinking, oh, I don't exist. So there's lots of incredible work out there by incredible healers, um, on YouTube, I mean, and then you get into narcissistic literature and videos. That also saved my life because I couldn't understand what narcissists were doing. I was like, wait, why are you doing that? Until you like watch all the videos, you're like, oh, okay, this is actually very predictable behavior. Okay, 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 I get it now. So there's tons of resources out there online which have been very helpful to me. Okay, step 3 we're going to get into right now is reframing scars from sources of shame to medals of honor and sources of power. So if you don't mind, I'm just going to do 1 or 2 of those with what um, I'm tempted to do it with what's in the chat, but maybe that's too, I don't want to probe into people. I'm going to do mine. Okay, so um, I would like to be able to feel my feelings more courageously, is something I wrote, because I'm an expert at running away from them, right? Which was what was modeled to me. So instead of feeling them, I judge them. I don't like them. They think they make me weak. I think they distract me from my daily work. I have shit to do, right? I don't have time to be crying around. Um, but everything that I've heard from all my elders says no. When a feeling comes up, you honor it, whether it's joy or grief or anger or embarrassment or fear. My head. Or whatever it is, that feeling is not only good to do every now and then, but it's actually good to turn that into a way of life, an everyday thing where you are moving through your emotions and it becomes, you know, the way that you relate to yourself. It's a lifelong partnership with yourself. It's not a partnership that you pick up on Sunday and put down the other 6 days of the week. Ideally, right? Of course, you know, we're all a work in progress, but ideally, we are in constant communion with our feelings. And if something really pisses you off or triggers you, instead of looking at it as like, oh, I'm not very healed, I'm not very mature, I'm supposed to be this professional person, but I'm acting like a little kid. Instead of that, say, oh, whoa, I'm really heating up here. I'm really freaked out. Cool. What is this about? Treating it as an inquiry of like, my body is like freaking out right now. That's a clue. That's going to give me a breadcrumb to lead me to what needs to be healed. How exciting. Cool. So when those really intense triggers come up, which actually came up today for me, instead of feeling shame about it, instead of feeling like, oh, I'm leading some course on childhood healing and here I am acting like a total child, I don't do that anymore. I'm like, oh, okay, I'm really defensive about this. Great. I'm identifying that. I'm always praying to heal more and more. This defensiveness is giving me an opportunity to explore what is wounded within me. This defensiveness is my friend. This defensiveness is my messenger that's giving me a chance to see what's up. And so that's really exciting when you start to see it that way. Of course, sometimes you're so lost in the trigger, so lost in the pain, so lost in the defensiveness that you can't remember, oh, wait, I'm trying to see this as a good thing. But ideally, every time that really intense, whatever it might be, we have many different flavors of triggers, right? There's so many endless kinds that are very unique and nuanced to our specific life experience. But whatever they are, they're always a really exciting portal into the things that need some love, the things that need some attention, the things that need some pondering and introspection. And that can always, like, for example, in the workplace, right? There's 3 places where our childhood traumas really come up: romantic relationships, the workplace, and friendships. So we have these, there's probably more too, but that's the ones I've heard of. In the workplace, we get all kinds of our stuff gets pushed, right? Like, oh, I'm feeling insecure here, you know. And in romantic, oh gosh, romantic relationships, everyone here knows, whew, that's not for the faint of heart, right? That's where you're going to get really, really in touch with what's going on in your wounds. And those are the gifts, the snotty, watery eye, angry, hurt gifts is in relationships. But again, they're all blessings if we remember that they're helping us tap into those really, really, really raw sore spots within us, and that those spots just need to be held, not judged, and loved. So there's a million more things I could say, but we are running a bit low on time. So I'm just going to move us to the last little lesson, I guess, within this class, which is the LFF process. Thank you for sharing that, Vidyananda. So LFF is look, feel, forgive. And that's kind of what I've been talking about this whole time, minus the forgive part. The looking part is no fun. Looking. So I'll give you my example. When I was like 19, 18, if you would have asked me, how was your childhood? I'd be like, oh, it was great. Perfect. I grew up in the forest. I had horses. There was a hot springs across the road. I had a mom. I had a dad. I came up with all these creative reasons why I had a perfect childhood, because I didn't want to look. I didn't want to look at the truth that I had actually experienced some very, very hardcore stuff, including different forms of incest. I had experienced drug addiction. I had experienced all manner of abuse, physical, emotional, sexual. I had experienced that whole higher achiever thing of not feeling good enough unless I went to Stanford and blah, blah, blah. And but the looking, luckily I had an elder who was particularly blunt with me. she looked right at me. She said, "You've been raped." I was like, "What? Excuse me? No, I have not." And I had done all this mental gymnastics to feel like I hadn't been. But if you really look at, Lyla in college years and high school years, there was definitely some not good stuff going on. And she was so blunt with me, she forced me to look. And I was like, oh, that's not very pretty. But when we look, we do so with a lot of love for ourselves, because the instant thing when we look at bad things that happen to us is to judge ourselves. So as you look, always go in with an immense amount, an overabundance of self-love. Because when you look, that's when the second part automatically starts coming up, which is you feel. And that's also not very fun, because when you realize you've experienced something as extreme as, for in my case, incest, you are flooded with shame, confusion, anger. I'll say confusion a second time. And you have to realize that just because something bad happened to you doesn't mean you are bad. That's a huge one that is really hard for us to understand. And the biggest one for boys is Coyote has two different ways. I won't say all boys because there's fluidity and there's differences, but if you hurt a young man's mother through domestic violence or even emotional abuse, that really hurts him because the little boy wants to protect his mother. And if Coyote can make him think he failed to protect his mother, he thinks he failed at one of his big jobs. And then he has all kinds of ripple effects down the road of not feeling like a man, which of course is not true. Every man is a man is a man is a man, if that's how he identifies. And it was not his fault that his mother was hurt. You'll talk to men who were in diapers when his mom was getting beat up, and he'll say, I should have done this. I could have thrown the hammer at him. I could have done this, done that. Sorry. And then you have to come to that young man inside and say, no, it's not your fault. You didn't do anything wrong. And there was nothing you could have done at the time. And that's okay. Your mother is resilient. She is powerful. And they never even touched her because she is not her body. She is her spirit. And everything's going to be okay. And you are still going to have so much power in your life to protect other women. You have so much of that ability. And so it's really different depending on which angle you're coming at this from. But that's a really common one, extremely common, because Coyote spirit knows that that's how you get a young man. Whereas with women, the sexual abuse is how you get them because, well, you don't really get them, but you make them think they've been got by thinking, oh, I've desecrated like my womanhood or whatever. Because in my case, you always blame yourself. And that's important not to do. To tell the little boy, it's not your fault your mom got hurt. And to tell the young woman or the little girl, it's not your fault that someone did this to you. Really important to release that. That's another magical phrase. It's not your fault. When we release that, we turn that scar into a medal of honor, into a source of power. When we realize it's not our fault, this is not our fault, then we step into more of the truth, which is that, wow, I survived that. I am not a victim. I am a veteran of a war on my spirit. Heck yeah, I'm still standing, baby. And so that's really where we want to get to. Whether we're male, female, or two-spirit, or non-binary, we want to get to that point where we're saying, still standing. What? Come at me now. What more do you have? Nothing, because you threw your worst at me, and I'm still here, still standing. That's how you turn that into the medal of honor. And so that's that feeling part. But the feeling, you're really feeling when you start feeling love for yourself. If it's shame or blame, you're not quite getting it yet. And that's okay. You got to come at it again, perhaps. If you look, the goal of this whole healing process, when you look back at your life, you look back with love, compassion, and understanding and forgiveness for yourself and others. And you appreciate yourself and others even more. So the final F is forgive. Forgive is also extremely important. So giving is annoying sometimes, right? How in the heck am I going to forgive the person who did that to me when I was a little girl? Well, it took me 10 years, frankly. It took me 10 years from the beginning of praying to heal that to the actually feeling that, releasing that. So what is forgiving? One of my elders defined forgiving as not holding it against them anymore. Sounds crazy, I know. Sounds insane, in fact. How on earth would we not hold that against someone anymore? How in the blazes of the universe, would anybody not hold that against someone? Well, I think for me, it's become easier because I've been such a bonehead in my life, and my elders forgave me. So not forgive me, they just came to me with compassion and understanding, and they gave me a second chance, that it's easier for me to give to others. I'm not going to say easy, I'm going to just say easier. So that's one way to help have the power and the strength to forgive, is to remember that Creator already forgives us for all our mistakes. And then when we do that, we realize, what a gift would it be to give someone else that liberation. It's sort of like you have this key to somebody's prison, and you open that prison and you throw the key away into the, or you know what I mean, you let them out of the prison. And so that is an extremely generous and extremely powerful gesture. And I want to say very clearly that forgiveness does not have to happen in person. And sometimes it is not safe to do so in person. Sometimes that person is still not safe to be around. So forgiveness oftentimes happens in the heart. And I'll give you a little tip. If you can't forgive them, then ask Creator to help you forgive them. Because some things, it ain't happening on your own. You need that help to help you do it, because Creator is always there for you. So my elder, she had been sexually abused many, many, many times in life, from birth to her 20s. And what the spirits were asking her to do was to look at each time, feel each time for what it was. Don't rose tint it. Don't blame yourself. Understand what the person did, whether it was intentional or whatever, and forgive each one of them. Can you imagine her process of forgiving every single man and woman who had done that to her in her life? And she did it. And the forgiveness is the beginning and the ending of healing, she said, because when you forgive, you release the last wound that the person gave you, which is the wound of bitterness and anger. Because you can heal yourself a lot, but then if you're still carrying that bitterness and anger, that's actually hurting us more than anyone else, right? So when we forgive, we're released, and there is a very somatic physical healing that happens when we do that. We release really real stuff that's living in our bodies. When we let that burden down, whether it's to that person directly or in the comfort and the privacy and the safety of our own heart and our own ceremony, when we lay that burden down by the water or wherever, however you do it, you are truly taking stuff out of your body that was not helping. And that release is a really big one. And it's a really powerful one, not only for you, but for all generations. And we're seeing what plays out in the world when we don't forgive. It's the cycle of the opposite of healing that perpetuates. Okay, so I'm really glad to end on the note of forgiveness, because that really is perhaps, I won't say the most important thing I could say, but it's a big one. And I'm really joyful to end on that note, and to advocate for it. And it's a good reminder for myself to practice what I preach, because there's a couple people I'm pretty upset with right now, which is okay to be upset. It's okay to feel anger. I'm not saying that. In fact, it's really good to honor that anger in the safety of your own home, where you're not gonna, throw a rock at someone, but maybe throw a pillow at the wall or whatever you need to do.
thank you for your time. And I deeply appreciate and love you all very much. And I want to honor my ancestors and my elders who really who are the source of like 99% of everything I just said. I'm really just plagiarizing them. So I give it all up to them, and I thank them for helping me heal, so I can hopefully maybe pass some of that on to all of you, as you deserve that healing as much as I did, and as much as we all do. And I pray for your journey that it would be blessed in a good way.
Dr. Lyla June, thank you so much for your wisdom. Thank you for your grace. Thank you for your alchemy. And thank you for your surrender to the wisdom of the ancestors and being a good steward of that wisdom. I've been blessed by your wisdom. I've been blessed by your grace. And just thank you for what you left in the circle and the practical ways of talking about how we heal. So instead of being like pie in the sky, being real about it. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Reggie, for holding space. I really appreciate it.
It's been an honor to be in your direct company. We'll be back tomorrow, y'all. Blessing on your evening. Thank you, Kripalu. Thank you, donors. Thank you, productions team. Blessing.